Hello and welcome to the Warp Shelf. I'm Frank Duran.
I'm Deshaun Vasquez.
And today, two artists decide what belongs on your peripheral Warp Shelf.
Yep, that can be anything from comics to movies to TV shows to just general art. Anything that really moves you and is worth keeping with you, whether that be literally physical or just with you in spirit, especially with streaming services continue to fuck us.
Today, our Christmas episode. Weirdly, we're doing one that's not exactly Christmas themed.
It's not a Christmas movie.
It's not a Christmas movie, but it is the 30th anniversary of the movie coming out, so we might as well just slap it in there, baby. It's one of my, and I don't say this lightly, one of my favorite movies of all time, Mask of the Phantasm. We're talking about Batman Mask of the Phantasm, and as a companion piece to it, to kind of spice it up, we're also talking about Dark Knight, a true Batman story, written by one of the writers of this movie, Paul Dini. And the Dark Knight takes place during the production of
Mask of the Phantasm. But
so I think this is kind of like a two. They're peas in the pods. They're combo. They work well.
There is I had read this years ago around the time like the trade had first come out, and I had like recommended to just like, dude, this is good. You need to read this. It's like very deeply personal. It ties into like the production of the show and especially the movie. And this is why I pushed it to you when we were like, oh, we should do Mask of the Phantasm because this Christmas Day it will be 30 years old.
I know, right? So I'm 32. So I'm a little bit older than this movie, but I grew up with Batman the Animated Series, and this is one of those movies that I saw very early on. It's not only does Batman the Animated Series like shape my childhood, but like this movie does, so this in a combo with a deep and moving story from the writer who gave me such an important part of my life is awesome.
Yeah, Paul Dini is it's a good episode when you watch the animated series. This guy right here. I do have the bigger box set, but it's easier to hold the booklet section.
Oh boy.
Signed by the late great Kevin Conroy, rest in peace.
Woo, rest in peace. Fucking my Batman, our Batman.
Yeah, absolutely. But you always knew it was going to be a good episode when Paul Dini wrote it. Like, beyond the stuff that everyone knows, like he created Harley Quinn and the like, but you also have those like staples when people bring up the best episodes of the show, like Heart of Ice, which was the thing that completely reinvented Mr. Freeze. And that's like the standard we follow.
I have a bunch of Paul Dini comic books sitting behind me. Not only Mad Love, but also private case books he did a while back. And then one of my favorites is the Black Canary and
Zatanna book. Yeah.
Zatanna
Super
book.
Fun.
They are
I really want to follow up to that.
Really great. And I would have said that was my favorite like Paul Dini comic before that. I would have been
before reading this.
I would have been like, hey, that's a lot of fun. That's what other than Mad Love, of course, because I feel like Mad Love is it's great in comic book form and in animation form. But I think that this is a book that fires on all cylinders and is able to tell a story of pain, which is very hard to do. And like a tale of self-tragedy that you're kind of like revealing.
I remember years ago, like around like a decade ago, back when we were still in college or like just after it, when he was going around like talking about this book back when Fat Man on Batman was still a thing, and it was specifically interview focused on like Batman related or comic book related creators before it just became a general nerd podcast. It's funny that we followed in those footsteps as
for
well.
that long.
Yeah. Paul Dini came on the show and talked about it and how he had been like kind of crafting it for like the better half of like since the accident had happened. And it was just, you know, it's tough to go to that personal place. So you sort of like work on it slowly and like try to work it out.
Yeah.
So I remember him talking about it there before the book had even come out.
And it's even in the dedication here. It's like the second person he dedicates deepest gratitude to Kevin Smith, who prompted me to talk about the mugging on his podcast, and for convincing me it was a story worth writing. You rock, sir. So like definitely Kevin Smith's Fat Man on Batman has a big influence on this book getting done, which I think is awesome because we love Kevin Smith here.
Yeah, and
so it's really cool.
I can't remember what school it was, but I know Kevin Smith and Paul Dini went to the same school for a bit.
Really? Oh,
yeah. I can't remember if it was like elementary, middle, or whatever, but I know they had like been in school together at one point.
Huh. So kind of let's touch on why this book is amazing before we go into why the movie is iconic. So right off the bat, we already kind of said Paul Dini, but don't forget you got our boy Edward Rousseau underneath. Oh my
100 bullets, baby.
100 bullets, baby. This is okay, 100 Bullets is a fantastic read. Fantastic read. But the man is able to render so many great styles and a mix of a lot of different emotions, and he's got this fantastic visual style that if you haven't had the pleasure of reading 100 Bullets or any other Edward Russo reads, which I actually have a ton of Edward Russo stuff on my shelf here, and I feel like
there's also that that Wolverine book he did as well. I think that's like I think that's what I own from him. Yeah, but I do understand what you're saying. Like his style like is very fluid and ranges the gamut between like realism and also just like heightened, almost, how would you describe, almost pulpy, I would say.
Pulpy. Yeah, like, and he's able to kind of mix that in here because there's a lot of Paul Dini talks about how he not only uses characters from pop culture to like obsess over, but like as a distraction method, as like kind of imagining they're there, and that leads to literally them like manifesting and showing up. And what that means is you get great panels like this where you have like a very realistic Edward Russo room of characters with like a pulpy Joker sitting in the middle, like, and that like keeps happening over and over again where characters are brought in and in different styles,
and the way they like pop times as like a juxtaposition to the more like monochromatic look of everyone else.
It's awesome. I love it. And they he even kind of keeps it, even is able to change his own style with these like panels like this where it's like dark and brooding, but then of course when we cut out to the hyper realistic narration, it's completely almost different,
it's very like bright and warm.
It's
because it's from the present. And it makes sense because it's a present day recollection, so you're starting from a much like brighter place in his life.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, of course, it starts right off with the invisible kid stuff that they have right at the beginning of this book, where he's as a young child being like, I was invisible kid, I didn't want to be seen. And you have like
mood.
And yeah, I was reading this being deal. Like, this is a huge Deshaun Mood book. I was thinking, I was like, there's a couple things here. I was like, yeah, there you go. But I thought that was great that like he's doing simple cartoonish styles to depict himself and super realistic for like everyone else because he's a nobody, it's very interesting, and then he like when he goes up to his room and is full of imagination, he loses that simple style and is to a realistic style, emoting that like he's becomes himself through his imagination, and through his art and what he does. And I feel like that's such a cool visual. It's like in the writing, but it's obviously such a cool visual motif going into this book. And you feel Paul Dini, of course, is the king of that, but also Edward Russo has to be. You got to be commended. This is a fantastic book because it's one of those that it's. Do you see this? It's not that big.
No.
Me and Deshaun both reread it. You reread it last night. I read it for the first time this morning. It's a super simple read. It's one of those that like I kind of I would say it's one of those that you like kind of you get ready in front of like something warm, a fire or whatever, and you read this book and it's like a deep personal journey, which I feel like Paul Dini is so good at doing the fantastic, the fantasy, the pulp, that to see his like super realistic side is fantastic too.
Yeah, and getting
Like,
into some like
awesome.
very deeply personal stuff, even beyond the initial like altercation that the book hinges on.
Right. So yeah, I mean that's definitely. I think that has to be said about this book is that you're like, okay, so he gets beat up. What is the rest of the
Yeah, I was about to
book
say we should
about?
contextualize it for people who are unfamiliar.
Yeah, so like I mean the Dark Knight, the true Batman story is very much Paul Dini is coming home one night and gets mugged, and definitely the muggers were looking for an excuse to kill him and just like beat the shit out of him and really just absolutely wrecked the guy and had to do like face surgery and a bunch of other things. And of course, like nobody, it just doesn't, nobody, the LAPD doesn't catch them, doesn't, can't find them, just kind of gives up on, anything for his mugging. And it's kind of like he has to deal with this as like a Batman writer where it's like, a lot of justice and a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
write stories where Batman will always come in and save the day. I don't really feel that much anymore after this incident. And just that idea
yeah,
of just like, I don't even know if I can like write Batman anymore, if I even like believe in it.
right. And I thought that was I think that's such an interesting, so great coming from somebody who lives in it. Like it's so interesting to be like, I don't know if I can do that. And it's funny how of course 90s Hollywood was like, so you'll be back after this attack in like a week, right? You'll be back and you'll be fine, right? You'll be you can just keep going, Paul Dini. And he was like, no, no, no. Like because they did they it was I can't imagine, it's like the way he describes it is so like harrowing. It's so just like it's so real and so devastating, and one of those things where it just a violation of just somebody on the street coming up and beating the shit out of you for no reason really, and like altering your life really, is crazy,
Yeah.
like it's like the to come back from it is going to be very hard, like. And they were definitely like right away being like, yeah, you can come back and write the rest of Mask of the Phantasm scenes, right? And he's like, no.
Yeah, yeah. The way Alan Burnett is portrayed here, it's very like firm but fair.
Yes,
Where it's
because
just
I
like I
feel like,
care, but also he's like, but also we have deadlines and shit.
yeah, I think that he's not. I think Paul Dini's not trying to paint him as a villain. I think he's
Mm.
trying to paint him as one of his good buddies and trying to get him back on the horse, like instead of just letting him slump into nothingness, like. And I think that that's super interesting to see the dynamic of that. I think that this is a super interesting read because I just read the men who created Gundam, which was very much in a similar way, where it was just like telling behind the scenes of uh of Gundam, how it was made. But like that, they say it right at the beginning, that's not what this is. And I think that that's important to say, is that that's not what this book is. It's not just like, hey, here's how it was made. No, this is a man's struggle uh with being basically like violated through physical violence, like
Mm-hmm.
it's just like Jesus.
And then it
And
gives
what,
way to just like all the mounting like self-doubt and stuff that he was
yes.
going through. Like it tackles his love life, it tackles his own self-harm.
Yes, I thought that was quite interesting. That, like, he's talking to. It's funny. He's like talking. It's always his psyche talking to him through
A
these
Batman character,
characters, a
yeah.
Batman character. So like, there's Poison Ivy being like, you're all worried about, like your face being destroyed, but last year you cut yourself up because of a girl, like, and and he realized, he gets to realize that how over dramatic and not worth it that
Mm-hmm.
was, like, and it's
Or
like,
even that
it's
bit
one of the,
with where you actually see the script for Mask of the Phantasm, that bit about
yeah.
Bruce being like, it seems like you start a relationship with them just because you know you won't have a future with them, and then that being called out is just like, oh, you're writing about me, aren't you? And that's a line
And
in the movie that
yeah, I
stuck.
thought that was great. I thought that was great. I was like, okay, all right. And it's I I think it's one of those things that this story is so, it made me want to cry. I've constantly, it's just full of these uh it feels like Scott Pilgrim, where it's like these deep realizations that Paul Dini wasn't, maybe Batman himself,
Mm-hmm.
like, but like, and like, that's not a terrible thing, like, not where there's, it's an impossible thing to be Batman, like, it's something to realize. But it's also one of those things, it's an inspiration. It can lift you up more than it can tear you down, basically. Like, and I thought that was quite interesting, like, and I absolutely love that kind of like dealing with the mythos of Batman, but also what that means on a personal level, not only to Paul Dini, but like as readers, like, what can Batman mean, and these characters mean to us, and to Paul Dini, to even in the darkest of times,
Mm-hmm.
like, because it seems so silly when you're like, I'm mugged and I'm like thinking about Batman, what would have Batman have done, like, or like thinking about, like, what, Poison Ivy would say to me or something, or what Joker would say at this moment, like, it seems so silly, but uh it's one of those things where he establishes how he grew up with it. He knows those people just as much as he knows family. And when he's writing those characters, it's
Yeah,
very
and
similar.
personifying those characters in like different stages of his mentality as he's going through this all makes sense. I remember him talking about
Mm.
that on the podcast where he talked about like what each character represents as an emotion that he's going through,
Mm.
and the
Yeah.
reason why Harley Quinn doesn't really show up in bits and pieces until the very end is because to him, like, Harley Quinn is just like, it's fun, it's bliss, it's joy.
Yeah, he's just having a good time with it. She only shows up when he's finally like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
like, it's like, I really enjoyed Penguin as his kind of alcoholism, just being like, yeah, like pushing him on the bender, and kind of Joker being this kind of like, what does it all matter anyways, sort of thing always for him,
Yeah, like
like,
the
just
nihilism.
the nihilism, and Batman being the kind of, I love Batman. It's funny because like you know, he does justice to Batman here. You know, it's not just being like, you know, like, oh, Batman didn't help me, fuck Batman sort of thing. It's like one of those things where he kind of has those conversations with Batman and it feels so fair, you know, like what's coming out of Batman's mouth, which is funny because it's like, well, of course it does. It's coming out of Paul Dini, you know, who's been writing Batman forever, you know.
You know,
but
some of the
like,
best episodes of the actual show also wrote Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, wrote the first two Arkham games, and the third Arkham game definitely suffered from him not being there.
Yep. So, and I still haven't played the third one just because I've kind of been like just because Paul Dini's not on
gameplay
it.
wise, it's a lot of fun, but story wise, it takes a dip and a half.
Okay. I mean, Gotham City Sirens was fucking rough as shit story wise. So
I mean, just Gotham Knights.
Sorry, Gotham Knights.
I'd play a Gotham City Sirens game. That'd be fun.
Right. That'd be a good time. But it's one of those things where I really loved the character of Batman in Paul Dini's life here, which is a weird way to say it, but like, is that Batman doesn't give up on him and it is kind of like pushing him to be better, kind of in the way that Alan Burnett is trying to push him to be better in a way, you know, like, and I thought that was interesting. And like, so it's like kind of funny because you have all the villains being all these like vices for him, like, you know, Poison Ivy pointing all his like relationship problems, and then, you know, like, and Joker just fucking with him, and Penguin being alcoholism, you know, like, I
Batman is almost just like objectivism.
Yes, right.
Where it's like Dini's just like, I can't really be objective right now.
And I really loved the, you know, him kind of playing it out at the end here, where he like kind of talks to all the villains and kind of, you know, kind of deals with all his demons. And I think that's I didn't think that would happen in the book, you know, like, and I thought that was great. One of the best scenes in this entire book, though, goes absolutely shout out to the Sandman pitch scene. That shit is awesome. Literally, Paul Dini, they have a scene where Paul Dini pitches to Alan Burnett a episode where Sandman, basically Batman dies. Death tries to meet with Batman, and Dream steps in and is like, no, he's one of mine. Instead of, you can't like take him. He's part of the dream realm more than he is, you know, a part of life.
Death.
You know, like,
life and death.
They called him the cheater, and I thought that was fun. I thought that was great.
But
I really,
it has that same.
Cool,
it's definitely that same mentality of like, Batman can't wear either a Green Lantern or a Sinestro Corps ring because he's such a balance of willpower and fear that they both cancel each other out, so he can't wear it for long.
That's funny. I do love that shit, but I really like this. Like, it's like him showing off this kind of like gritty, cool pitch that we never got to see, and I really enjoy that. You know,
it's like, although I do get Alan Burnett's side of it, where it's just like, this might be a little too metaphysical, but then I think about episodes like Perchance to Dream,
right,
and stuff, and you're like, I don't know, I feel like it probably could have worked, and if it's not punchy enough, there's definitely things it's very easy to just write a fight in. You can add action here and there.
He doesn't stop there with like the proposed ideas that he's sharing. Like, the other proposed idea that I absolutely love, that he's just like, it's kind of more of a mental thing for me. It's not something that actually would have happened in the show, but he has this great conclusion in Batman Beyond, where Batman just keeps the Joker in a fucking jail cell in the Batcave, just like keeps him in a like a one brick room and just like feeds him and everything. But that is it, you know, like, that's where he's kept. And I thought that was such like a great idea, because Batman's immediately like, yeah, but that's too vindictive, and he's like, exactly. Like, Like he's like, exactly, that you wouldn't do that, like, so it's just really for me. And you're like, I kind of love that, like a writer being like, this is not something the character would do, but this is what I wanted to do as a writer. And you're
Yeah,
just
there are a
like, yeah.
couple instances of that. Like the bit where he thinks about like buying a gun and he gets a Walther and goes to the shooting range with it. And the idea of like Batman taking the gun from him and actually getting the targets right, and him being like, DC's going to be real pissed if I have you using a gun like this. He's like, there's a difference between wanting to use it to hurt someone and knowing how to use it.
Yes. There's not only is I just want to like, it's hard to like sum this up and kind of give it to you guys other than saying like, this is something to be read. This is a great Batman story. It's not only a great autobiography.
It's basically a memoir in comic book form.
Yes.
And it works
And
better in this medium than it would have if it was just written in prose.
yeah, or animated in some way, like I really love this. I think that this is it's a extremely genius use of the comic book form. It's deeply personal story that is hard to write, and he gets it across in a way that not only do we understand, but like are able to like kind of go along with him, like along on this journey. And I think that that's it's super. It just shows the genius of Paul Dini,
Yeah,
like he's
and
able to
it
really,
speaks to like what you may not know about what creators are going through when they're making the shit you like.
yeah. I think that it's a cool behind the scenes story in the way you would never think, like, most people are reading behind the scenes stories like the man who made Gundam, and you're like, I just want to know what happened when they made the first show, like, or they like, that's not what this is. But in some ways, this is far better than that, like, because it's like you get almost a deeper look at the process in that way. I really had a crazy time thinking about the writer's room after reading this, like the writer's room of Batman the animated series. I'm like, that must have been crazy.
Yeah.
Like that must have been nuts, just being like all these I mean, they didn't know it at the time, but all these like fucking legends just killing it in that writing room. And you're just like, I love
Just
that.
not even really knowing what they have. Like, sure, there's the success, but you never know when something's going to be iconic until you give it some time. And also, I'm sure a lot of the time they were more focused on just like, I just have to get this done. We have a deadline. That was the thing with Mask of the Phantasm. Like, it was a rushed production while they were working on the show still.
Yes, several times it's brought up that he works on several scenes where he's writing it, but like they hold off just to wait for him, which is very nice of him. Something they didn't have to do, especially because they only had 8 months to make the movie, which is insane. Especially because it was first they were I think they delivered the storyboards to the team the day that they heard that it was not going to be a
straight to video.
It was not going to be straight video, but an actual theatrical release. They had just delivered only the storyboards. So basically, they had nothing because they revamped it from there and did it all in 8 months and delivered one of the best fucking Batman movies ever. I'm not joking. I'm not joking. Agree with Robert Pattinson agrees with me, and so does Kevin Conroy. He agrees. They agree that this is the best Batman movie. Sorry. I mean, Dark Knight's fantastic. I love Dark Knight, but like
I do love Mask of the Phantasm, but I prefer other movies, including animated.
Oh my goodness, you son of a bitch. We're going to fight today. That's what we're going to do, Deshaun. We're going to fight today.
We're not going to fight. We've had this conversation before.
I know, just kidding. But to wrap it up, basically this is a must-read Batman story with not much Batman in it.
Especially if you're a fan of the animated series and Mask of the Phantasm and like Paul Dini as a creative.
And I feel like Edward Russo, if you just love Edward Russo art, I feel like this is, like panels like this, baby. panels like this where Batman just kicking a fucking car in and he puts his signature in the corner and you're like, yeah, Edward Russo, you do that, buddy. You're like, hell yeah, that panel's fucking epic as shit, my man. I feel like it's a great read, a short read, absolutely worth it, worth the buy. If you can get your hands on it, absolutely do it. Must do. Now let's talk about one of my favorites of all time, but I know you do not agree at the same time, but we'll talk about it. So Mask of the Phantasm, I I love this movie because it's one of those things that it's doing a lot of things. It's doing Batman Year One, it's doing Batman Year Two, and it's also doing a real Bruce Wayne love story that isn't completely uh you know just Catwoman
Talia.
or Talia, like this is something completely different. And I mean, there's several things in the animated series that like change comics forever, and I feel like Mask of the Phantasm is one of them. Where, sorry, cat jumped up on me. The is Mask. You get the Phantasm in comics after this, so it's just like one of those things where you're like, okay, so another thing like Mad Love and Harley Quinn, where you're just like, okay, so we
Yeah, the
went,
Phantasm was
like,
already like loosely based on like the Reaper from Year Two, but then after the
it's
movie, they
its
just kind
own
of made the
character.
Reaper more like the Phantasm. So you're like, yeah, that tends to happen. Even
Yeah,
if it's
exactly.
if you make something iconic in another medium, it tends to influence it for better or worse.
Yeah,
That definitely becomes an
Guardians of the
issue on the
Galaxy.
Marvel side of things, where the comics
Oh
at
yeah,
this point are basically just R&D for the movies, and it kind of sucks.
yeah. I feel like it, and then it translates to the games where we get, instead of, I mean, discounting Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2, but like, the Avengers game was very much just like, oh no, we need to stick to the movies, and you're just like, why? We have the movies, like,
Yeah,
you're just like, what?
they
Like,
can be
what?
separate things.
They could be separate things. The Midnight Sun said, fuck that, and did their own shit. And, like, and I feel like that's what they need to do. Sorry, my cat is all over the place here. Ella, the new cat, just loves being in my lap all the time, and you just does not understand what I'm doing when I'm talking on the computer.
Of
She's
course
like,
not.
what the hell is this? So, but I did I wasn't gonna. She's a girl, but she could have been Barbara. I was trying to convince Mary to name her Barbara because look, she a black cat. Like it's just Barbara Gordon, but she didn't go for it.
Could have been Selena.
Could have been Selena. That would have, that could have worked, but no, wouldn't go for that. Ella Fitzgerald, or so that's what she went for. It was more
Nerd.
music nerd shit. But besides the point, Mask of the Phantasm, one of it's one of those things where even in the book The Dark Knight, Dark Knight, they talk about, they're like, wait, this is a Bruce Wayne love story. They're like, well, and Alan Burnett's like, he never gets to get a love story, we never get to do that in the show, so might as well do it in the movie.
Yeah, because generally, and this is mostly because, they never want to have Bruce Wayne actually settle down, we tend to just go for the femme fatale route, both with Selena and Talia. We're just like,
Yeah.
oh, I know they're bad for me, but I'm
gonna do it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do it.
As opposed to something like Andrea Beaumont, which is just a genuine loving relationship
That he's
before he's
had for a
Batman and
while.
after.
And I absolutely love how they're able to weave this love story in with like the Year One stuff, and with like pretty much just all of the start of Batman's story. They're able to weave her in, and I think that that's so awesome. I think it makes it like part of it. the tragedy of him becoming Batman.
Yeah.
You know, like it's not just like, oh yeah, it's epic that he becomes Batman, you know. He's just kind of, you know, he's got to do it because he's got to do vengeance, you know, like no, he's giving up something, you know, like to do this, you know, like, and I think that that's an important part of it, you know. It's not just...
Scott Snyder did something very similar at the end of Zero Year, if you remember that moment.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I mean, visually, this movie is absolutely striking. They really go big with a lot of the set pieces, and even in the small things, like just the way that Angela looks, the way the locket looks, and the way it you know,
Yeah,
the
there's
twinkle in the
often that
Batcave later,
it
and even the
consistently
Phantasm
looks like one of the better episodes, because, you know, animation
yes.
varies from point to point. I know there's always that joke of like when you have an animated show versus when you have an animated movie, and the only thing that changes is a little more shading.
Yeah,
Like
right.
I've
That
seen
is
that joke
kind of what's going
before.
on here. Kind of
Yeah,
what's
and
going
that
on here.
is here too, but it is still like consistent throughout, where like everyone's on model and yet everything is so fluid, especially given how like short this production was.
Yeah, I feel like as a fan of the show, you gotta love that like everything looks like the show. It's not like all of a suddenly something else, you know,
Yeah, but
which
it
they
also
keep
looks like the most
consistent for like
consistent version of the
Sub-Zero.
show, because even the show had its like weird moments.
Yes, exactly. There is moments where you're like, ooh, okay. And even Bruce Timm, when speaking about this movie, says he thinks it's 90% there. That he was like, I wish we had more time, you know, because they made this for something like $8 million, which was in the same year that they made Aladdin for $28 million.
Yeah, that tracks.
And they grossed about the same similar money, and you're just like like it's one of those things where you're like, okay, like
Uh Definitely home video, because that
home
was
video.
definitely not in theaters.
No, not in theaters. It was more of like sales
Because
later.
of course fucking Warner Brothers would push them to turn it from a straight to video production to a theater production, but then do no fucking promotion for it in theaters.
Yep, yep. They're just like, what, 8 months? That's really short.
Oh yeah.
And then look at you in the eye and be like, that sounds sad. And you're just like, what the fuck? And like goddamn. I feel like 8 months for a live action movie is crazy. 8 months for an animated movie is insane. And for them to pull it off is crazy.
Yeah.
And
Especially
for
on
it
the
to be...
pre-production side. Like animated movies take a long time.
Yeah. And to be so fluid constantly too, you know, like it's not like, it does not suffer from being a lot of the animation does not suffer from that low budget. There's a lot of great really fluid and beautiful looking action sequences right from the get-go, you know, like right from the start with the guys making the counterfeit money, all the way to you know, just the fights with the Phantasm are all so good, and then to the end where uh Joker and Batman are actually, you know, really slugging it out, and it feels so uh like they're slugging it out, like it's
Yeah.
the end,
And
like
because it's a
that's it.
movie and not, you know, having to air on primetime TV, it can afford to be a little bloodier than usual. It can be a little more
Yeah.
violent.
This was the first dub Warner Brothers movie to have a PG rating. All the rest of them had G ratings before this, so this was a big
Oh
deal.
man.
We had to put on
They
your
needed the
big britches
parents.
pants to bring in the parents, uh, which I feel like was sort of necessary, because like, if you were like, this is a G-rated Batman movie, come on in, kids, they would be like, what the fuck? Like, they'd be like, did Joker just kill some people? And you're like, yeah, he did. He did do
Joker
that. And
stabbed that guy?
did the Phantasm just kill those people?
That's
Yeah,
always
and
like
Batman watched it. Yeah.
that's always like the image that like is burned in my brain is that bit where he stabs Arthur with a Joker serum. And it's like shown in shadow
Oh,
and silhouette, and then the close up
dude,
of his mouth as he laughs. Every single time, it always gets me.
that
It's so
and the old man being dead in a bomb that fucked me up as a kid was being the he's like Batman turns the old man around and the Joker has
it's
made the old man a bomb
Salvatore
already. You're like,
Valestra
fuck.
dead of Joker toxin. Yeah.
Yeah, you're just like, fuck. No, it's the Phantasm that turns him around. You're just like,
Oh
but it's
yeah,
still
yeah.
one of those things where you're just like, god damn. Like it's like it's one of those like visually striking Joker smiles that just sticks with you forever. That, and I've talked about it many times on the podcast, the Joker fish. The Joker fish fucked me up for a very long time. And and but also I would take an absolute replica of like a Joker fish, but like it's talking bass. I think that would be sick. uh might be one of those like
If
talking
that doesn't
bass things,
exist,
but
I'd be
painted like a fish,
surprised.
right? And I was thinking about it. I was like, with Mark Hamill doing the voice of the fish,
Mm-hmm.
that might be something to work on. But I think that's another thing to be commended here, is that not only do the already star-studded cast come into this movie, like already you have Mark Hamill and Kevin Conroy and doing voices here, but you also bring in Dana Delaney, who was very big at the time, like absolutely, coming off of Tombstone. The same year, actually, they came out. Tombstone and Mask of the Phantasm came out in
Have you ever
1993.
seen Tombstone?
I haven't, but I've
It's
heard it's
really
great.
fucking good.
I've heard it's great. But like she's been, done a ton of things and has been um Lois Lane in a lot of
Yeah, and
animated
when you
Batman
watch this, you
after the
can
fact.
see why.
I thought it would, dude. I wasn't looking at the screen. She started talking, and I looked over, and I was like, "Wait, am I watching the Batman? The Batman
Superman
Superman
crossover.
special
Yeah.
where Batman fucks Lois Lane?" I was like, "Wait a minute here." I was like, wait a second. And then I was like, no, wait, no. And then I had to look it up and I was like, oh, yep, that is. Afterward, they were like, well, that was fucking amazing. You're Lois Lane.
Yeah.
They were like, that was very good.
Especially since like I'm glad the later DCAU shows never chickened out of the like whole tragedy of Mask of the Phantasm story. And Bruce
yes.
and Andrea, as far as we know, still never saw each other again. We get that glimpse of Andrea in the Justice League Unlimited episode, which works as an epilogue for Batman Beyond, but she still never comes into contact with Bruce. She's just hired by Amanda Waller to kill Terry's parents, which he doesn't do.
And it's kind of implied that Joker dies here, but that's obviously like you can't do that with all of the rest of what Joker does in the DC animated universe. And it's explained that
they do that at the end of
fight
like
in the sewers and they beat the shit out of each other.
mm-hmm.
And well, she beats the fuck out of him, and then basically an explosion happens and separates them, and Joker floats off like he normally does.
I never needed an explanation. We have a million episodes that end exactly that way, where it's just like, how did Joker get out of that? There's the one where he gets punched into like the smokestack. There's the end of the Batman Superman like World's Finest like 3-parter where he's like on the exploding airship. So we end episodes like that a lot. It's just like, how Joker couldn't have survived that, and then he's back next week.
I did love I thought it was funny that I had to look him up too. Arthur Reeves is voiced by Hart Bachner, and he's the snitch from Die Hard too. Like he tries to rat out
Ellis.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. He's the
I
douchebag.
I never heard that before.
And I was like, oh, okay, because I was like, oh man, he's got like a famous douchebag voice, and I was like, oh, there he is.
Yeah, and Salvatore Valestra is voiced by Abe Vigoda, who is Tessio in The Godfather.
That is crazy. And then, of course, they bring in Stacy Ketch as the Phantasm and as her dad. which I think is always a great red herring, is that like he voices the voice modulator that's for
Mm-hmm.
for the Phantasm and the dad, and I was like, there you go, that's
But
like a cool red herring, you know.
that was always like one of the things about Batman the Animated Series from the get-go about the way they would cast, is that they never wanted, and this isn't really to diminish like voice actors, but they never
Yeah,
wanted like what was traditionally seen as cartoon voices back in the day. Just like, no, we want genuine actors who have been around the bend. We want to hire stage performers. We want to
yeah.
hire actors who have been in the TV world or the movie world for a long time.
So and I think that the cast here, you know, just continues to be fantastic from the show, and I think that that's what's great, you know, like it like continues the tradition of being like, yeah, okay, no, we're gonna keep bringing in those people. So one of my favorite things about this is kind of the different perspectives and the mystery unraveling here, because Mask of Phantasm is told from basically Bruce's perspective, but we also see Angela's perspective and
Andrea.
kind of Andrea and Joker's perspective, kind of. You know, like we kind of get to see those those three characters unravel the mystery themselves, you know, like, because, and I think that that's actually a fun part of this,
Yeah,
is that
it's
it feels like a movie that's racing towards each other, you know, and
exactly,
it
which
finally
is why I
comes
actually
to.
think, and you see this when you read Dark Knight, the working title of it just being Batman Masks instead of Mask of the Phantasm is actually kind of a more fitting title. And
Right.
it's actually kind of a better title.
And it's just not as iconic as
Yeah.
Mask of
Well,
the
it's not like they would have
Phantasm.
known.
Yeah, right. Somebody knew, obviously. They changed the name, being like, yeah, no, that doesn't have the punches. But I I think that that's one of the strong parts about this, is that not only is it telling a great Batman origin story, a great Bruce Wayne love story, but it's doing a mystery, you know, because like Batman, it's doing a classic animated episode mystery where it's like Batman's being blamed for murders, and he's at every scene he's like, no, I didn't do that, and they're always like, Batman killed that guy, and he's like, no, I literally had nothing to do with that, like, and they're always like, no, he did it, I saw him do it, and they're like, no,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, fuck you guys, I'm out of here. And you know, classic Batman stories. But I think that that's the fun of this, is kind of like you don't know it's Angela. Oh my goodness, sorry,
Andrea.
Andrea, sorry, I'm slapping a bunch of Italian A names in there. Andrea, uh, Andrea's, you don't know she's the Phantom until or the Phantasm until uh which they don't say that name in the movie either. They don't say the Phantasm, you know, like they
Yeah,
don't say it at
they never
all.
really call him that. No.
Yeah, and I thought that was interesting too. I was like, oh, so that is truly like after the movie was done, they were like, it's the Mask of the Phantasm, and then, you know, they were like,
Just
all
like, that's
right,
cool. What's a phantasm? Who knows? Just watch it.
who knows? It's not
You'll
the
have to
fucking
watch. You'll
movie.
have to tune in and find out.
uh but I I think that that's you know, you have the all this other great Batman stuff going on, but also a classic Batman mystery sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing, and it leads to the ultimate culprit of it all, fucking Jack Napier, fucking Joker himself. And I think that that's you can't use that you know, that trigger too often, you know, like
It is.
Joker was the reason behind this, you know,
Yeah.
so this is a worthwhile one, you
It's
know, like,
always
and I feel like
interesting that like one of the things that like comic book fans are very very fickle about, or not even fickle, they're very strict about, is going through like the Alan Moore philosophy approach to Joker, where it's just like, nope, never origin, always a
yeah,
lie, or maybe it's some truth, always ambiguous, never give him definitive backstory. But also but also the same people who would say that would also say animated series Batman is the definitive Batman, and that's a Joker
yeah,
with a plain backstory, and that's only because that was carried over from 89.
right. And I think that that's funny too, that they're kind of like be at doing it as an homage to 89, but changing it up slightly, not making it straight up that they you know, kill that Joker kills Bruce's parents, but something different. Which I was reading also that they had written an episode where Joker did kill Bruce's parents,
Mm-hmm.
and he just doesn't remember who it was, because he only saw the gun, from all the trauma. And I think that would have been an interesting episode too, but I do think that would have been like you would have had to draw comparisons to 89, and
Yeah.
instead you get to play with Joker causing this trauma in Batman's life,
Like the animated series will
but
always,
so retrospectively.
yeah,
Like Joker didn't even mean to cause this pain to Batman that absolutely devastates him, which I think brings Joker even more joy in so
and
ways.
yeah, also the idea of like creating your own worst enemy.
Yes, exactly.
And but yeah, the animated series will always be intrinsically linked to 89 because it's pretty much the reason it got made, because that was such a huge hit. But it's also
true. It was a huge hit, and it made people well, I think you can even trace it back further. You can trace it back to Neil Adams and who was
Danny
his
O'Neill
partner, Danny O'Neill, and they brought the serious tone back to Batman. Like they really did the
yeah, they were already putting
guys,
in the work.
we're done with
even
the
if
60s stuff.
Yeah, even if Frank Miller gets all the
story.
credit.
Yeah, even though Frank Miller gets all the credit, I would say Neil Adams and Dennis O'Neill should get more of the credit for being like, let's get back to the origin of this character.
And to be fair, I think that's also
came in and was like, let's keep it up.
That's also a difference of, whereas like Denny O'Neill, Neil Adams' run on Batman was more like, we're playing it straight again, to be fair. Whereas Dark Knight Returns is just like, we're going dark on purpose and we're staying there.
Yes, we're staying there. That is going nowhere else.
Like the Neil Adams and Denny O'Neill stuff was more like, we're leveling it out. It's just like, oh, we're going into the deep versus with the Dark Knight Returns.
Oh my goodness. I think that, I think that this is a more adult story. I think that this is but it's funny because as a kid, I absolutely ate it up. Like it's one of those things that you can challenge kids. Like I feel like Batman the Animated Series is one of those like big examples of children's media that is like challenges what that means, like, and tells complex stories.
Exactly.
So because kids can understand complex stories, it's not hard.
What?
Like
no, they can't.
Like maybe they're not filling in all the blanks, but they can absolutely keep up.
There are fewer things that like irritate me more than the excuse of like, well, it's for kids, so it doesn't matter if it's good or not.
Yeah, you're like, oh no. Those same people let their kids watch Cocomelon, so that's the problem.
Mm-hmm. You can have stuff that's like challenging and still like kids, especially me as a kid. I was watching a bunch of shit I wasn't supposed to by general standards. It's one of those things where like as a kid, I always could sense a mile away when I was being talked down to. So I always gravitated towards stuff that wasn't talking down to me.
Exactly. I think that kids hate being talked down to, and I feel like that's the reason why they love Goosebumps, like back in the day, it's because it didn't feel like you were being talked down to.
Yeah, it's why there's an entire generation of Avatar: The Last Airbender fans that have never watched anything else.
Yes. Which it was funny. I was at work, and two people, like some people had seen, of course, grown up on it, and some people hadn't, and it was funny to be like, oh yeah, no, you should watch Avatar: The Last Airbender, instead of having a weird nostalgia.
Yeah, that and anything from the DCAU is just one of those like pioneers to be like, animation is not a genre, it's just another medium to tell stories. And you want to talk about like the lack of respect we always have for animation. This is also something that would also spurn arguments all the time when people would say, oh, I can say Mask of the Phantasm is my favorite Batman movie. Yeah. Because, especially since it was theatrically released, even if it didn't really do well because of it, it was a last minute decision. Just like, hey, it released in theaters. It did its time. Siskel and Ebert did an episode on it. They both loved it.
They both loved it, and I think that that's the thing. Is like I think it can stack up to most of the live action Batman movies. You know, like I feel like this movie is deep enough, it does enough, and is a big enough story to beat out a lot of the live action ones, which is funny. You know, like I'm
And
like,
we
okay,
also we've talked about it a few times on the show about like using your time well. Like you want to talk about a comparable story to all the live
right?
action movies, which are close to like 2.5 to 3 hours, whereas Mask of the
This is an hour and
Phantasm, yeah,
17. Hour
it tells its
17.
story just an hour
Boom,
and change,
boom, fucking slaps that
less
baby
than
out,
90
and
minutes.
like and doesn't waste a fucking second. That's what I think is one of the major advantages of this movie is absolutely engaging, because it knows that even though it's a movie, that their audience is used to the 20-minute format, and they need this to fucking not waste any time and keep moving.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like every little thing in this movie, it moves the plot forward and nothing is wasted. This is a very skinny beast here. You know,
Yeah,
like this is
it's the
all
same
the
reason. I mean, it's
fat
part of
is
the same
trimmed off,
reason you love Evil Dead 2 so much. Like Evil Dead 2
right?
is less than 90 minutes, so of course it's going to move fast. And it's also one of those things where, like, yeah, I don't mind long storytelling. You like a story is only as long as it needs to be.
Yes,
But at
exactly.
the same time, I do feel like, and this is sort of just one of those things that comes with the territory, given how much TV is taken over. There are things that don't need to be told in 10 to 13 episodes, let alone 23. And I feel like we're
Yes,
starting to use things
exactly.
as a crutch to like, let's make everything a miniseries. Let's make everything a TV show when you
But
can just do a
also
movie.
in to like to but also things don't have to be only 6 episodes, like all of the Star Wars shows on Disney Plus. You're like, hey guys, that was like a first, thing. You didn't have to do only 6 episodes moving on beyond that. You know, like it's one of those things where you're like, what? Why such a weird number? Like, what the fuck are we doing here? You know, like, and the same thing for the Marvel shows. They're weirdly numbered. I don't know why we're doing these strangely non-TV packaged numbers for
Yeah,
these
it's that
things.
like
You know, like it's
trepidation
just
of
like,
like,
what?
is it a miniseries? Is it a TV show?
So and you're
Depends.
like, okay, like it's one of those things that I feel like some shows suffered from being shoved into such short amount of time, and some didn't. You know, like, and in a world where we're getting What If season 2 this week, like, and then we're also getting Rebel Moon part 1
Mm-hmm.
on Netflix this week. So you have two examples of things that like should either are too long, like Rebel Moon is probably, and then
You say it's too
and too
long, it's
short.
going to be longer because they already said a
Yes.
longer director's cut is coming.
I know, and I'm like, oh no, guys. I've seen all the bad reviews. I'm excited to watch it myself. I'm not just like Aquaman. I'm gonna make my own fucking decisions about those things instead of being like, all right, well, it's over now.
Yeah,
You know,
I've
like
heard
it's
most of the complaints are on like the character side. And I remember hearing like from the jump when they said like there will be two different versions, that theatrical is going to be more on spectacle and
oh,
directors will have more of that character stuff.
yeah.
I do
And
sort of get Zack Snyder like knowing how to play to the audiences, or it's just like you can make two different versions. You can have one in
yeah,
theaters
right.
that's just about the pew pews, and you can have one on TV where you have the time to sit down to care about everything else.
And but then I also love, What If, which is telling these big uh Marvel stories in like 20 minutes and sending you on your way, instead of being like, it has to connect to the bigger Marvel universe. It's like, no, nope, here it is, just a What If story, slap, like, and I am so much more for that than I am to jump into season 2 of Loki. I know I'm behind, but I just don't.
Everyone says it's good. I haven't started it either.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone says good and they liked it, but I'm just kind of like,
I
I'll
mean,
get to it.
my thing is like Loki was the closest thing to good Doctor Who in like 5 years when it came out, but now Doctor Who is back. with Russell T Davis,
and on Disney Plus too.
And I'm having fun again, so I'm like, I don't really need Loki anymore.
So you are having fun again with New Who? The New
Yeah,
Who's
all
good?
the 3 specials came out with David Tennant were fun. Judy Gott was already in the role now. The Christmas special will be solely about him.
Cool.
I like him so far based on what little I've seen of him. I like his energy. It's just fun again. The Chibnall era was a slog to get through, and I'm glad it's over.
Okay. Are they kind of like being like the Chibnall era never happened, or are they being like
no,
whatever?
they have a very comic book approach to it, where it's just like we either just don't need to bring it up, or we can contextualize it slightly differently. They add some fuckery. I'll tell you about it after.
some fuckery. But basically, I think 30 years later, to bring it back to Mask of the Phantasm, 30 years later, Mask of the Phantasm is worth a rewatch. It's still one of the best Batman movies, but you were saying earlier, and we haven't talked about it really. So why isn't it your favorite of the Batman movies? What do you because it's up there for me, but you were saying it's not even your favorite animated. So what are you saying here?
I'm just saying that I prefer Batman Beyond Return of the Joker. I'm not alone in that.
Right, okay.
Scott Snyder apparently does too.
Yeah. Okay, I thought you were about to shoot off something blasphemous. Okay, that's fine. Return of the Joker is a masterpiece.
And plus,
and it's still written by our man Paul Dini.
Exactly.
So
and plus, while Mask of the Phantasm does get brownie points for basically being its own original story, it's hard not to bring up the like straight adaptations that we've had, like Year One and Dark Knight Returns, which are so close and they're already based on such amazing stories. Especially Year One, that shit is 1-to-1 the fucking comic. So you're like, well, I mean,
there it is. It's moving. Look at it go, guys. Look at the comic go. Like that's definitely what that movie is.
It is sort of like,
I also really love them kind of doing Year One in the Batman animated show universe here. Even the scene where he's running from the SWAT, like I think that's fucking epic, and it's like, even though they do it great in the new animated movies, I feel like there's some je ne sais quoi to having what's his what's his name in the animated show? It's not Bullock, it's or is it Bullock?
Yeah, it's Bullock.
Like, okay, yeah, and he's like, you dummy,
the flashback of him being like a beat cop before he became a detective.
Yeah, it's fucking funny. And how I thought it was funny how little Commissioner Gordon's in this, and all he's doing he's in 2 scenes, and he shows up and he's just like,
stop it,
how dare you say shit about Batman, I'm out of here, like, I will not take down the Batman, and he just leaves them to their devices.
It is weird that we've never had Bullock in a live action movie.
I know, right? It is weird they've like changed it to something else, like in Batman Begins.
In '89, we had like Eckhart, who was kind of Bullet-esque.
Yeah,
we had Flash in Batman Begins, which, to be fair, Flash is in Year One, but no Bullock.
Yeah, you're like, why? Like, and we probably won't get it in the recently announced official title, The Batman Part 2, which we're finally getting a numbered Batman movie. Like, why do we need a number in a Batman movie? Matt Reeves, I love you, but why the fuck do we need a Part 2?
I don't mind it, given how like self-serious the Batman is. And Matt Reeves being pretty strict about, like, I'm probably only doing 3 of these. It's just like one big story. Like, when you put a Part 2 with a Roman numeral, it always gives it like an air of sophistication.
And they're trying to be like, it's The Godfather 2 now.
Yeah.
Okay. Like,
so
I know
it doesn't
what they're
bother
trying
me.
to go for, but it bothers me because you have such unique titles, and now I have to be like, The Batman Part 2. Which one are you talking about? No, The Batman Part 2, not of random Batman story.
That also helped separate itself as its own thing, because it was already super uncreative to just call it The Batman and by adding a the. At least if you're
That's
going to go
true.
with a different like sequel kind of sequence, you at least separate yourself a little more.
I don't know. I was looking forward to some creative titles, and I got bullshit. Is all I'm saying. You know, like
That's fine.
I could have, like you know, like and also you could have like foreshadowed a little bit. You know, like you could have called it the Batman Death in the Family or something like that. You know, like because they're bringing Joker in. You know, like there's ways to do this, and instead we get part 2, which gives me
That's fine.
nothing.
I get why they did it. The Last of Us Part 2 instead of just calling it 2 did the same thing. If you add a
we've already
part,
discussed it.
when you give it a Roman numeral,
it's classy.
It's classy.
It's classy. I mean, we already talked about it.
Plus, it's not like we're not also getting the Brave and the Bold on top of that. So
yes, we're getting the Brave and the Bold. We're getting an Arkham series. So like, there's a lot of Batman going forward. You know, like I do get that, and you're not, and you know, we already discussed how Godzilla X Kong, A New Empire, literally gives away the fucking plot. So you shouldn't. That's a bad title, you know. Like, and I feel like
also Godzilla X Kong. What is this? A fucking Japanese game? Is this a ship?
Like,
are they finally gonna kiss?
And I don't like the new title for Ghostbusters, The Frozen Kingdom. You're like, is this a goddamn Mario level? Like, what the fuck? like I mean, you had to do something.
I mean, there might be a Frozen Kingdom in it, Frank.
There, I saw from the trailers there is.
So there you go.
So I know what they're going for. I am excited for that Ghostbusters movie.
It could have been way cheesier. It could have been some shit like Ghostbusters Meltdown or some nonsense.
Exactly. I would have, but I almost would have expected Meltdown, and I would have gone with that. You know, like I would have been like Godzilla Meltdown, perfect, nailed it. You fucking got me there. You know, like, but Kingdom of Frozen Kingdom, it feels like a bad video game title. You know,
what about Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom? What's up? We also got Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes coming. Enough of the kingdoms.
What's up with this shit? What's up with this? Yeah, well, everything's a kingdom now, and you're like, okay, what Warner Brothers producer is doing this shit? You know, like you're just like, who had to have Kingdom in all the titles? Like, what the fuck is that shit about? But besides the point, guys. 30 years later, go watch Master of the Phantasm. Anytime, Dark Knight, you absolutely need to read this. Both belong on your shelves. You couldn't even get the Blu-ray of Mask of the Phantasm until literally like 5 years ago. It was one of those things where it took 24 years, they said, to get the Blu-ray out, which is a little ridiculous because we've had Blu-rays for a very long time.
Yeah, and after years of seeing it on either TV or DVD, like it would be hard to try to go back to those old transfers now. One of the things that like you never notice until you get a better remaster when the Blu-ray came out is how much there's been like this weird like pinkish tint to the movie in every release before the Blu-ray gave it a proper remaster. When you look at comparisons, you're just like, oh wow, it does have a weird color to it, and it always has.
Yeah, DVDs are a fun era where it's just kind of like they put the file on the disc and they didn't really care if something went wrong when the file got on the disc, you know? Like, so fun stuff like that happened all the time instead of Blu-rays where they were like, oh, sorry, you know, like
always those like little things you pick up on, especially if you buy things throughout the years for different mediums. One of the things I always joke about is I love Silence of the Lambs. It's my favorite movie. There's a scene where there's blood on Lecter's mouth, like on his lip, and it's always looked like pink to me. On VHS, it looked pink. On DVD, it looked pink. On the initial Blu-ray I got, it looked pink. And then when Criterion finally gave it a proper remaster, it actually looked like blood. I'm like, oh my God, they finally fixed it.
Oh my God. Criterion, this is the reason to buy Criterion Collection shit. That's the reason why. Because you get that nice remastered. That nice shit right there. So basically, absolutely own these two. You don't have to get hardcover, but I would get hardcover for Dark Knight. And
yeah, also support physical release. I've seen there was a Black Friday sale. I'm sure there's probably a holiday sale, maybe.
Yes.
For the animated series. Definitely not the collector's edition one, because I think this is out of print now. But
they do have a version which is everything.
I know can get just like a standard, normal, like collector's edition. which is
Yeah,
fine. This is mostly because it comes in a cool booklet and it has like this
that's so
box
much
with like
cooler.
tiny little pops in it.
Oh, you got some tiny pops there. Nice. The only pop I have left are other than Godzilla is Vampire Batman and Batman Adam West up there.
What, you didn't
That's
keep
the only
J.J.
Funkos.
Abrams?
No, I did not keep JJ. That's but you know, that's there's the little Batman shelf up there that doesn't get shown every episode if I tilt the camera.
But if nothing else for its 30th anniversary, just do it for Kevin Conroy's sake. Because it's not,
Yes.
or even just the rest of the cast, because it's not only just him that we've lost. Like over 10 years ago, we
Yes.
lost Michael Ansara, who voiced Mr. Freeze. We've just lost the actor who played Harvey Dent on the show. We lost Arlene
Yeah.
Sorkin, who played Harley Quinn. Like, we've been losing a bunch.
Yeah, and it was like kind of sad to like read her scene in Dark Knight here where she's like super kind to him and is like his first call. Like he's like immediately is like, I want to hear Harley Quinn's voice.
Yeah, they were,
which I thought was funny. Like, you know, like,
yeah, they were good
and,
friends.
like,
He saw
they
Arlene
were good
Sorkin
friends.
in a stage performance where she played like a jester character, and that was the inspiration.
That's so funny.
And another
crazy.
good reading recommendation. I wish I had remembered this before we did the episode. I would have added it as like reading material as well as Dark Knight.
Okay.
Is there was a comic book issue or a short story that Kevin Conroy had written for Batman, and it was all about his story about how he felt being cast as an iconic character as a gay man. Very good read.
That is cool. I don't know if I've read that yet, so I would absolutely read that.
Yeah, DC put up like the snippet of that because I think it was like a whole like anthology issue. They put up the
cool.
Kevin Conroy story up specifically for free when he died,
so
like everyone could read it. Like I'd never heard of it beforehand, but then I gave it a read. Then I'm like, oh, now I'm sadder.
Oh. Yeah, now I'm sadder. Now this hurt. And you know, I would say that is definitely, and this is a very uplifting story, but this is also a very sad story. You know, like I feel like this is something that, you know, if you're not ready for that, you know, like, and you know, it's almost like a trigger warning that it is about a violent encounter, you know, like, and some people really have lived through that, and it is a trigger warning thing, you know, like,
yeah.
like
If you've never seen Mask of the Phantasm, give it a shot. You don't need to have seen the show to watch it.
No, absolutely not. If you just love Batman, this is one of those things.
I had showed it to one of my friends. He actually welled up fucking watching it, which is funny because he cries less at media than even I do. I'm like, ha, gotcha.
Ha!
But that was a springboard for him to eventually like give the whole DCAU a shot, and he did go through all of it.
You should. Yeah, absolutely. And if you haven't watched all of the DC animated universe, you should. It's an absolute joy to watch.
Yeah, he went through the whole shebang, minus Static Shock and the Zeta Project, obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
But he walked away. He actually walked away with Batman Beyond being his favorite. He really loved Batman Beyond. I'm like, hey,
that's fucking awesome.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
No, nothing's wrong with that. Batman Beyond's a great time. You know, like I have not, you know, like, and it like for me growing up, it was speaking to me at the right age. You know, like where it was just like, this is, you know, what I'm here for. You know, like, and I thought that's what's so great about Batman Beyond.
But
you know,
watch
like,
Mask of the Phantasm. You can get it on Max for the time being.
Yes, for the time being.
You never know. No fucking permanence. But also see if you can get your hands on the Blu-ray. The Blu-ray by itself is super cheap. I used to have a copy of it. I think I gave you mine because I got this.
See, I was thinking that, but I was maybe I need just to dig around a little better because I was like, I don't know where the fuck this movie is on Blu-ray. I watched it on Max.
Yeah, I think I gave you mine because I had this, and this comes with Mask of the Phantasm and Sub-Zero.
Yeah,
it doesn't come with Mystery of the Batwoman.
Hey, I didn't think that was that bad. I thought that was just fine.
It's not great.
It was just fine. I thought it was a great longer episode, you know, like it's kind of like that, where you're just like, where it's kind of like the Twilight Zone movies, where you're like, that was a good long episode, instead of being like, that was a good movie, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you're just like, yeah, you're like, they really extended an episode there. You know, like that's what That's what Batwoman feels like. You're just
I
like,
mean,
okay,
Sub-Zero kind
they
of feels
extended
like that too, but it's good.
it's good. Yeah, it's good. I mean, I had a good time with it, but that's the way it is. So I had early Christmas with my dad, and one of the funniest things he gave me, which he gave me a lot of funny things, but one of the funniest ones was he gave me just the first issue of the newest Batman comic where he is with Santa and they are doing adventures together. And it is so fucking funny, Deshaun. I was like flipping through it and just dying because it's just like it's absolutely ridiculous. But the funniest bit is Superman being like, Batman's hanging with Santa and they're like talking really friendly, and not Nightwing's talking to Robin and he's like, they were like, and Robin's like, wow, he actually knew Santa this whole time, and he was like, and he's this cool, and he's like, I thought he was making it up. I thought he was just trying to make Santa cooler, like I thought he was, like. And then my favorite bit is that I think it's at the end of issue 2, which I had to look this up to see it, is that Superman finds out that Batman knows Santa, and he's like, you've known Santa this whole time and you didn't tell me. And like, you can tell how devastated Superman is that like Batman wasn't sharing the knowledge of Santa with
That's
Superman.
hilarious.
I was like, oh my god. But it is, I thought it was a funny gift, and I was like, oh my goodness, what a ridiculous
I'm annoyed because one of the Christmas gifts I was going to get for myself was a Cell from the DC animated universe, because I did run into a vendor at Fan Expo Boston. They were the guys who actually bought up the old like Warner Brothers archives to get a bunch of animation shells for their old stuff, and
that's crazy.
I thumbed through them when I was at the convention, and there was so much animated series stuff. It's just like, I want one. I want at least one, but they're all like $200 to $300. I'm like, that's fine. I'll get one and just be satisfied that way.
I did love him flexing his animated cells in this book too. In Dark Knight, Paul Dini being like, "Yeah, I got animated cells on my wall." You're like, "Oh hell yeah, man!"
Yeah, they're expensive, and the big thing is like the trouble is finding a legit source. Even when I saw that vendor at Fan Expo, like I did my research. I'm like, all right, who bought the archives? I'm like, okay, this is the company that actually bought those.
This is them.
It's legit.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Okay. I still want one.
I still want it.
I like, the dude gave me his card for it and everything. I'm gonna do it. I just don't have the cash right now.
Yeah, understandable. So my cat is crazy.
That's okay. It'll increase views.
Yeah, exactly. Cat on camera, increase views. That's YouTube algorithm, right? So guys, basically, Merry Christmas. Buy yourself some Batman. That's basically what this whole episode's about. Buy yourself and loved ones Batman stuff for Christmas.
Watch your favorite version. Do what you do. Watch The Grinch. Watch your favorite version of A Christmas Carol. It always varies from person to person.
Yep. Watch, if you're gonna watch a Gundam Christmas thing, watch Gundam War in a Pocket. It's only a movie. You don't have to watch anything else Gundam, so it's just a very simple.
You could also read Batman Noel. We actually did an episode about Batman that years ago on Real Books on that Batman when that came out.
Great read.
A Christmas Carol with Batman.
With Batman. It's exactly what you would think it is. And there's plenty to do that's nerdy and to do this holiday, and I hope you guys get everything your nerdy hearts desire these holidays, whatever that may be. And basically, guys, thank you so much for supporting the show, for basically listening. It's another year of you guys have been listening to basically bi-weekly episodes of the podcast, so thank you so much. I think that's
putting it nicely.
Hey, we're pretty good.
It's more just like when we kind of feel like it at this point.
No, it's at least monthly.
Yeah,
at least twice monthly. Sometimes most of the time.
What happened, Frank? We used to be on top of this.
We're pretty good at it. We're fine. But basically, thank you for your support. Thank you for watching all the shorts. We've done a lot more this year, and I really appreciate it for all the support you guys give us on those. And basically, it's fun to talk about Batman on the podcast again. I'm really excited that we got to do that, but also, thank you guys for supporting me talking to my best friend on a podcast. That's pretty fucking great.
Always a
I
good
really
time.
appreciate it. I appreciate it. So basically, to support the show, hit the buttons down below, make the algorithm do the thing. But check out galaxyofgeek.com for all the episodes in both audio and video form, so you can check it out on the galaxyofgeek.com website, but also the YouTube is embedded on there, and you can watch our beautiful faces on YouTube, on the Galaxy of Geek YouTube. You can subscribe and watch all these other the Warp Shelf content, like our false starts, our clips from the episodes, and the episodes themselves. So do all that stuff, and then make sure that you follow on our personal social medias. I'm Yep Frank or Yep Gundam, pretty much everywhere.
And I'm Monocrica pretty much everywhere.
And guys, thank you so much, and I hope you have a happy holidays.
We'll see you next time.
Adios.